Hello, I'm Shelley. I'm Shelley. Hello, I'm Shelley. I'm Shelley. I'm Shelley Duvall. I'm Shelley Duvall.
The Shining is undoubtedly a classic cult horror. What fans might not know is the making of the film was a nightmare all on its own. The on-set stories about the film are now a thing of Hollywood whispers that no one wants to talk about, because if we did talk about it, that would mean that it wasn't just a nightmare. It was a reality. A tragic reality that Shelley Duvall had to live through and scarred her for the rest of her life. So much so that she quit acting and never looked back. Don't forget to subscribe to Rumour Juice because there's no story that we won't talk about. In 2017, Shelley Duvall made a rare appearance on a Dr. Phil special because, as she herself stated in the interview, "I'm very sick. I need help." The interview revealed the former actress to be almost unrecognizable from her old self and suffering from terrible mental health problems. Fans of the actress were shocked to see how much she had changed and were, of course, incredibly concerned by some of the statements she had made on the show. The actress made a series of bizarre claims, including the suggestion that her old co-star Robin Williams was not actually dead, but was shape-shifting. Later in the show, Dr. Phil took Duvall to a mental facility, but she refused treatment and was sent home after only 3 days. Many commentators blasted Dr. Phil for seemingly exploiting Duvall's illness in the name of ratings and spoke out in support of the actress.
It prompted stars like Mia Farrow to boycott today's episode, tweeting, "There should be laws to protect mentally ill people from TV talk show predators like Dr. Phil, who is exploiting Shelley Duvall for his own gain."
Even Duvall admitted that she felt misled by Dr. Phil's producers and his refused requests for a follow-up appearance on the show. Shelley, a film icon, is now 72 years old, and yet, despite the impact she left on the film industry, we've barely seen her on screen at all in the past 20 years. The Texas-born actress starred in a number of the best-loved films of the 70s and 80s before gradually fading from the limelight and quietly quitting the business. And while we know that there's nothing wrong with an early retirement, and we'd like to think that Shelley is simply enjoying a well-earned rest after a fruitful career, the truth is a lot more tragic than we thought. So what was it that pushed Duvall to a breaking point? Well, for those of you who don't know, in 1980, Shelley Duvall was cast alongside Jack Nicholson as his wife in the film adaptation of Stephen King's novel, The Shining.
I was at Cannes asleep at 6:30 in the morning. I got a phone call from my agent, and he said, "Guess what? You're going to star in Stanley Kubrick's next film with Jack Nicholson." And I went, "God, that's great." I was in seventh heaven. It was.
Directed by Stanley Kubrick, the film depicted the story of the protagonist, Jack Torrance, an aspiring novelist and recovering alcoholic who was offered to serve as the caretaker of the isolated, and might we add super creepy, infamous Overlook Hotel in Colorado. Shelley was already in a vulnerable and fragile state when she arrived in England to shoot The Shining. Her boyfriend at the time, singer-songwriter Paul Simon, had broken up with her right before she had gotten onto the plane. So when she arrived in England, she had been heartbroken and abandoned by the man that she loved. The environment on set did very little to ease any of the actress's current heartache. In fact, the treatment she received only amplified her fragile state of mind. Work on the film alongside Nicholson lasted almost an entire year, with notoriously hard director Kubrick often spending more than a week at a time on single scenes. Duvall had to spend a great deal of her screen time crying and screaming in terror, and as Kubrick would force her to shoot these scenes over and over for month after month, this naturally took its toll on the actress psychologically. Stephen King openly admitted that he hated Kubrick's adaptation of the film, especially the characterization of Duvall's character, Wendy, which according to him was a misogynistic portrayal of a character that was totally different from the one he had written about in the books.
The book was warm and the movie was cold. It was a Kubrick film. And don't get me wrong, I love everything else the man did. I just didn't like that one.
It wasn't just Stephen who was disturbed by Kubrick's interpretation of Wendy's character. Those who watched the film were also shocked by the performance that Shelley gave in the movie. "She's basically just there to scream and be stupid, and that's not the woman that I wrote about," King said about the film. However, we should add that the author aimed most of his critiques at Kubrick rather than Duvall herself. It seemed like all she did was scream and cry, and the sad truth is, she wasn't just crying on screen. Tears streamed down her face even when the cameras weren't rolling. Things might have improved if Duvall had received the praise she deserved once the film was released. Unfortunately, it was not well received at all. Duvall's work, in particular, attracted so much criticism that she was nominated for Worst Actress at that year's Razzie Awards. We all know that it's the director's job to encourage their actors to get the performance that they need for the film. However, Kubrick did a lot more than just encourage his actors. Nicholson was fed nothing but cheese sandwiches that he loathed for 2 weeks straight to unleash the madman in him. And while that might not sound so bad, it's nothing in comparison to what Shelley had to endure. Stanley pushed her to a breaking point. In fact, most of the horrific things that happened off-screen all happened to the actress. Duvall was last seen in Manna from Heaven in 2002 and is now completely withdrawn from the spotlight and keeps to herself in her Texas Hill country home. The former actress chose to open up in a rare and candid interview about her traumatizing experience on set.
A person so charming and so likable, indeed lovable, he can do some pretty cruel things when you're filming.
She recounted the horrifying psychological and emotional torture that she endured during the shooting procedure. According to Duvall, the role was emotionally and physically exhausting as she would have to force her body to be in a state of constant panic to appease the filmmaker's expectation regarding Wendy's character.
And it also helps get the emotion up and the concentration up, because it builds up anger, actually, and you get more out of yourself. And he knew that, and he knew he was getting more out of me by doing that.
Reflecting on this tortuous experience, Duvall had explained that to get herself into the necessary emotional state, she would think about something very sad in your life or how you miss your family or friends. But after a while, your body rebels. It says, "Stop doing this to me. I don't want to cry every day." And sometimes, just that thought alone would make me cry. One particularly intense sequence, the confrontation between Nicholson's Jack and Duvall's Wendy on a staircase, wound up earning a spot in the Guinness Book of Records for the number of takes put on film. Kubrick made the two actors do the scene 127 times over the course of 3 weeks before he was finally satisfied with the outcome.
And they said, video rolling and all that, and I got all ready, and jumped up and down, and then they said, never mind, cut it. And then I went to take a bite of soup. The next thing I know, action, Shelley. So.
It was reportedly said that the director would openly praise her co-star Nicholson's work without ever saying a complimentary word to Duvall. The experience left Duvall physically ill and losing hair from the stress. It was also rumored that her shining co-stars were instructed to not sympathize with her on set in order to push her mental state to the brink, mimicking the isolation and fear her character was meant to express, which ultimately left the actress alone and friendless on set. Despite her horrific experience filming The Shining, Shelley did not give up on acting just yet. The actress decided to play a considerably lighter role in Popeye as Olive. The film was a live-action take on the beloved cartoon, with Robin Williams as the lead role. Unfortunately, this film was also met with a mixed response, so she slowly faded out of the spotlight. Now, with her gray hair and casual, cozy clothes, you might hardly recognize her as the once dark-haired Wendy Torrance, or the glamorous starlet who once graced countless chic Hollywood galas in the 70s and 80s. However, it's clear that Duvall is at peace and content with her life off the grid in rural Texas, with her long-term partner Dan Gilroy, and it seems very unlikely that she'll ever return to our screens again. However, regardless of where Shelley Duvall is today or how the public remembers her, her catalog of excellent on-screen performances will always remain her truest legacy.